almost 8 years. So this was my thesis. I did a lot of bad work in that 8 years, and I don't really have many pictures of it anymore. The internet was very different from like 2006 to 2010. So I kind of just like I could find it, but didn't seem that relevant. So this was my graduate thesis. This is 7 feet, I think, and this is called Picture and Picture. And this is when I started playing with the idea of Godzilla. And this series of paintings in particular was called The Flock because there's all these kind of dead bodies, if you look closely, that you can see swinging around. They're in Godzilla's mouth. And I was really thinking about dystopian images, science fiction, um, kind of the sadness, the cross between the sad and the happy. So I've always like had really dark kind of undertones with these bright colors, and there's like games happening. So I like that juxtaposition. So this was the other piece before I stretched it. Um, did I write what it was called? I can't remember what this is called. Um, so it's kind of collecting imagery. Oh, this is called True Love because that is the boat um, from the movie High Society, starring Grace Kelly and Bing Crosby. So a lot of movie images involved in these works. I was thinking of the Emerald City. That's that those like kind of cactusy phallic shapes over there. And this is about the same size. I think it's about 7 feet. Um, this is another one. I think this went slightly before my thesis, or maybe it was in it. I can't totally remember. Um, and more monsters, more kind of playing with landscape, fantasy, that type of stuff. So this was a little bit later. I did this at a residency in Virginia. And I was started to get more particular with the bodies that were in the landscape. Um, in particular, thinking about fashion models, thinking about like the way women are treated, not well ever, and still having some um, magical landscape. But these women, some of them in the forest look like they have ball gowns, and then some of them on the benches are like prostitutes. So I was thinking about that a little bit. This is actually, it looks like a really large painting. So this was also really large. And it's actually behind me, so you can see it there. But this looks really large, but this is actually quite small. I think this was like 24 inches or something. And someone bought it, so I don't have it, but I really liked it because I like the landscape feeling. And I was looking at this artist, Trenton Doyle Hancock, a lot. And he kind of has these shapes that he thinks of that were from his childhood. So I was borrowing some of that energy from him. So yeah, not that big of a painting. So this was a project I did a little bit later, and it's called 100 Godzillas. And there are 100 Godzillas on this wall. And I made a lot of them, but I also collected them from different artists. And then I had a show devoted to it. So there's like vastly different energy in them. And I asked artists from all over the world to send me their interpretation of Godzilla. And here are some of them. The one in the middle is my mom, but I can't remember the other ones. who did what, but I should go back and photograph them. This was a great lesson in learning what I actually the steps that didn't photograph, and I've been in the process of redoing my website. So I took it down a few years ago, and I just haven't gotten to it. So throughout all the painting, I make these smaller sculptures out of ceramic. Another place I teach across town has a wonderful kiln set up. So when I'm feeling stuck with my large paintings, I go back to ceramics and create these characters that will most likely end up in the paintings later. So I can kind of see them three-dimensionally, and they're quite, I think this size that you're seeing on your screen on a regular kind of laptop is comparable to the size that they actually are. Um, so yeah, I start playing around, and it's really helpful for me to kind of get out of the big, like, what type of world am I going to create? How am I going to like envision all these characters, and what am I feeling? And it's like such a friggin' process. So I go back to these types of things, and the characters usually inspire me. So the characters that are kind of faceless, I call the flocked, and the characters that kind of take over the world, they're usually like the people behind the world, and I call them the thinkers. A little Rodin inspiration. So these end up being the thinkers. Um, yeah, and I played with different ceramics. This is terracotta. Usually I use porcelain. Um, and I love the high gloss um, finish. I don't usually finish them with matte. I layer on the gloss like as much as possibly the kiln can handle. In this pink one, I played around with having matte and shiny, and that was probably the only time I did it. Ultimately, I am into the extra. The more is definitely my jam in my art making process. So this was a show I did after so that was kind of all pre becoming a mother. And I was very frustrated in terms of women's equality and how people were being treated in Philly, and also the education in Philadelphia. And as a teaching artist at this time I was trying to like unionize teaching artists and going to all these meetings, and I was really fueled by this like lack of rights. um, and then I became a mother, and I had to stop being so me. So I started to think more about the kind of ghosts. I went back to kind of thinking about family, things that I've thought about in the very beginning, layering. So these were, I should have put this in order, but this should come first. So these were pictures I made. I had like a zillion doctors while I was pregnant because I had a lot of stuff going on. So this was called Doctor Series, and this was the finished product of that. Um, so these were kind of these doctory evil ghosts that I dealt with, and these color landscapes are all food, like the tops to baby food that I collected. So this was kind of the journey and trying to like kind of get over that period. This was the closing moment of the whole pregnant fiasco. So this was a show from 2017, and it was called Fuck You Guys. Um, Trump had just been elected, so that was that. So I went back to Godzilla about 2 years ago, and this was one of the first pieces I did. I was also working on a project with a friend collecting abortion stories and trying to empower women who had had abortions. And that was really important to me. So this was kind of like a comment on that. Take with it what you will. And then this is the beginning of this year. So these are some of the pictures that Joseph posted. Um, and this was the first picture I did in 2020. They're all about 24 inches. They're all the same size. I've just been like working on the same size, trying out different types of paper that I like, and creating worlds. Always been interested in that, like the grossness of places like Vegas and like where humans are kind of despicable. So I started just putting Godzilla in places that I've been to. And it was like not very, for the first time in my life, it wasn't very heavy. I was just like, okay, I'm going to have Godzilla be in a place in a daily life. That's it. So Juniper and I went to New York on a business trip for my husband, and this was the Ghostbuster firehouse that we walked by. And then I just kind of like put it in an old timey place with mountains. It's just for fun. Just was like thinking about things. I reread the Tales of the City series, which is about the queer community in San Francisco. And this was the house called 33 Barbary Lane. It's also a TV show. I recommend it. So Godzilla is like just sulking, like all the people who live in the house, lying down. Miss Magical is consoling a probably hungover Godzilla. So I just made Godzilla me, and I was just being really flippant and funny about it. It's just not very serious. Um, these are buildings by based on the buildings that the architect, what's her first name? Her last name is Hadid, Iranian architect who did a lot of work in the UAE. And she made these crazy futuristic buildings that don't seem like they would actually exist in life. And so I was just taking Godzilla around, like it was just very fun. And there's a baby Godzilla here. So this is called Mother and Daughter. Most of these are unnamed. 2020 has been such a fun year. So it's not like we were showing art that much, or I haven't really done much with them yet. They're just kind of in the universe, sort of on the Instagram. This is Godzilla at Penn Treaty Park, which is a local park to where I live. If you live in Philly, you would know it. Easter, Godzilla is collecting Easter eggs. So I think I made this around Easter. And oh yes, and so Easter was like we were already in lockdown. So this is what we would have done type of thing. So I was just kind of thinking about that. Um, Godzilla at the flower show. We have a flower show in Philadelphia, and this was one of the pictures that I saw. I never go. I I I like don't get why you would want to see flowers inside a convention center. Makes no sense to me. People love it. Um, but I do like looking at the pictures, and then I like looking like at the ceilings above because it's so unnatural, and I love things that don't make sense, like you know, all of it doesn't make sense to me really. But so this is Godzilla's back in Vegas. This is the pyramid. And she's just reading a book. And then, so this is kind of like the this was kind of like the beginning of the year. And then this is the beginning of the lockdown work. So got a little dramatic. Um, so this was the first painting I did, and I was at my mom's house in Cape Cod doing online teaching, and it was cold, and it was not like the summer. This is my greatest fear. It was not like this summer was, where at least for us, we were lucky. Like we went camping, we did open up our group a little bit and tried to have fun. This was like you didn't see anyone in the beginning, and we didn't know how it was going to be. So I was uh, doing that thing like this guy's swimming, he has no idea what's going on, and there's this thing happening on the movie screen that's going to tell you that there's no future, and he's oblivious. And that's how I felt the world was. It was just like everyone's fine and it's staring us right in the face. Yay. Um, and then this is Godzilla invading like kind of a Trump universe. And all the buildings say Trump, which is the John Oliver's campaign against. You can look it up, Google it. John Oliver's hilarious. Um, so yeah, Godzilla's just like looks confused, invading this sickly metallic universe. And I put the Statue of Liberty in there because I was thinking, you know, how hilarious it was that that's that kind of represents America to me right now. Just a universe of gold trumps, and then like our most iconic thing waiting to be destroyed. Or maybe it was never that important anyway, but and then we have a bunch of babies possibly drowning, or they're trying to swim. And this is another kind of futuristic. I love to put carnival things in my paintings, like carousels or whatever you call this thing, like the London Eye. It's called something. I can't think of it right now. And I don't really like rides. Like that's what's. I'm not a very like happy. I'm happy, but I'm not a overtly optimistic person, which is why I like to put all these bright colors in, because I think that that wash facade is. I just think it's funny, really. So these are just things that I've been working on this past week. Really rough. I'm layering paper. I'm letting things uh, just kind of be. So these are not finished pieces. These are not big pieces. I was just kind of showing you. That's it. I was just kind of showing you what I did in this moment. So that's pretty much the Natasha work for the past, few years. And this is, like I said, I would say I did show you a few pieces, but mostly this year. And as I'm looking at the slides, they're getting darker and darker. And that is only what I noticed since I just noticed it putting this together. So thanks for giving me that opportunity to realize things about my own work. Does anyone have any questions?
And it's awesome if people verbalize their questions, but if you're not comfortable with that, you can also post questions to the chat. I've got a question, Natasha.
Sure.
Why Godzilla? And I know in your artist statement you mentioned how your characters often represent real people. So I was wondering why Godzilla, and if Godzilla represented an individual person or if it's more of a conceptual icon.
Godzilla represents fear. Um, so I so I'm just gonna pull up my Instagram for a second because Godzilla's been like I'm attracted some to a lot of really the famous artists that I'm attracted to are all artists who've been working with imagery for a really long time and like from childhood. So I can't. I think I might have taken it down. So from childhood, I have been obsessed with Godzilla. And recently I just posted a picture of myself holding a giant Godzilla, like giant Godzilla blow up thing that was really popular in the 80s. People had them in their homes, I guess. Maybe just my mom. She's pretty weird too. Um, I've always been intrigued by monsters and science fiction and what these things mean, and they've always, like, for me, I've always known that it was about fear. And Godzilla's not the enemy; the world's the enemy, because the world can't accommodate something as beautiful and they just make her react if we in all the movies if we treated different type of people with respect, then there wouldn't be these monstrous outbursts, and a giant like Godzilla would just chill, um like everyone else. So that's, yeah, but mostly I mean fear and me, but that's all intertwined.
Awesome. Well, I definitely have some more questions if no if no one else does. So I'll just keep asking you until someone chimes in. How do you visualize dystopia? Like, what does that mean visually for you? And is there like a path to utopia in your work? Do you have a
So,
personal utopia?
oh, no, I don't believe that. I don't have enough faith in humans for utopia to exist. I think you can have moments of utopia, and that's what you that's what we as a society should settle for, instead of always trying to push people in boxes, um, for this never ending perfect thing that just ends up hurting people. We should just let people who be who they are and work from there. But the dystopia, again, it's all very much about anxiety and trying to live kind of a life that's um where you can be both an individual and express yourself, and also be a unique voice and imperfect without being judged. That's the goal, and it's very hard for people with different perspectives to have that in this world, and that's kind of like that's what I'm always talking about. It's the darkness and the Godzilla. It's just like my paintings are always in the action. They're in the battle between um, where things could go really wrong or really bad. You don't know yet. There's never an ending and there's never a beginning. So, and I think that's where we usually are, and that's where everyday life puts us. So, yeah, there's not a full on dystopia ever depicted. It's the struggle.
It seems like you use a lot of sort of Hollywood related imagery. Um, are there specific films that are your favorite films or most inspirational or influential films and shows on your work?
Sure. Well, obviously, I watched all the Godzilla films. That's an easy one. But the other kind of old Hollywood, ridiculous, like I'm a huge fan of Grace Kelly and all those men that surrounded her that were total assholes, like Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, all of them, Cary Grant. I mean, just treated people. not her because they couldn't touch her because she retired so young, but you know, they treated their wives and the women around them so terribly, and then on screen they were so lovely. So that's why I like to put things like that in. But I think that I'm influenced by movies the same way I'm influenced by everything. I like that moment that seems uh, surreal and dark mixed with like flamboyant happiness and colors and all this stuff. Like things, it's just the only way I can describe it is things that don't work together is my favorite moment.
What's your favorite film?
Oh, I don't. I mean, um I've gone through
Or the last film you saw where you were like, wow, this is
I know,
a winner.
I haven't had that in a while, but I mean, movies I've watched over and over that influenced me are movies like Logan's Run. Um, I love watching this movie that is a Village People biopic called Can't Stop the Music, starring Steve Gutenberg, and also has the Jenner person when they were a male trying to act. It's just so amazingly bad. Um, so yeah, I don't have this like high. I'm not interested in like the high art film thing. Just mostly the like how I can feel that like cringy that cringiness like that to me is really good. Like if it can make you feel like all that stuff, that's what I'm interested in. So yeah, Can't Stop the Music is a really great movie.
I'll have to check that out. I have not seen that.
Yeah.
What do you love and hate the most about the artistic process or being an artist?
Currently, what I hate about it is not having enough time to do it. A long time ago, I let go of the like New York thing. I can't. It's not really something that I could handle, and I kind of came to peace with that and committed to Philadelphia, and so so the art world doesn't bother me because I just don't really participate. I can take what I want and leave. Um, but yeah, yeah, you know, balancing it, having people in your life that um, accept it. I'm pretty lucky for that. It's like my mom is also an artist, so she understands that that has to be, you know, you have to be a selfish person in some regards. But yeah, I mean, the government would just pay artists. That would be nice. They sure want to use us for free quite a lot.
Absolutely. And another question I always like to ask everyone, since we do focus so much on youth programming at Portside, what advice would you give yourself as a younger artist now?
Um, to use your voice and to not worry about getting it wrong. Just like keep going, ask for help.
That is great advice. And we are toward the end of our program. So if anyone has any final questions, now would be the time. Thank you so much for joining our little talk series.
Yeah.
So it seems like everyone's shy. That's okay. So we do Artists at Lunch every other Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. So our next Artists at Lunch will be on September 30th at the same time. And again, if you can make a donation, there's a link in the chat to Portside Arts Center. That's going to help us support our students and our programming, which unsurprisingly is strained under COVID-19. So we really, really appreciate every donation that comes
Yeah.
in.
I will
Um,
say, just to interject, the kids need like support and structure. It is so important. I there's no way to sugarcoat it. Help the kids you know around you and donate to the causes you believe in this moment if you have the money.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Natasha. This was awesome. I was so happy to learn more about your work and the context and what was going on in your brain when you made them. Because you've shown me some of your paintings in the past, but we've never delved in depth in terms of your
All that
process.
work
So,
you're doing, yeah. Work always
yeah,
getting in the way.
awesome. Well,
Okay.
thanks so much, Natasha. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Pat, for showing up.
Signing off.
Okay, bye.
See y'all in 2 weeks.